We do this on a non-paid basis, Pro-Bono. Bitcoin is too slow, too expensive, and consumes a lot of energy. Kaspa, it has so many options and possibilities in the future because we are just at the very beginning. Kaspa is a very young technology, and we are already so advanced.
Welcome to XXIM Podcast, your home of decentralization. Today, I've got with me Paul Wenson. Paul is the Chairman and CEO of DII, which is the Desert Industrial Initiative, and also the Chair of KII, Kaspa Industrial Initiative. Welcome, Paul.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm so glad you could make it. So let me start with the first very simple question, Paul. When did you find Kaspa first, and who brought Kaspa to you?
Actually, last year, a good friend of mine, Rory O'Neill in Dublin, he made me aware of Kaspa because I worked already quite some years with Rory in different circumstances, also in DII in Dubai on energy. And we were always talking about the need for fast crypto technology. Not only as a store of value, but more as a carrier of information in different processes. And in the energy world, in the energy markets, there are a lot of potential applications that all need fast and reliable, secure information carriers.
So Rory brought it to you, Rory O'Neill, who's also a board member of KII, I believe, right?
Yeah, actually, he's one of the driving forces of
Right.
KII. He's the founder of KII. Actually, together with me, this KII was set up last year following the formula that we had set up about 16 years ago with DII, the Desert Industrial Initiative, which basically is an enabler for technology in the market. In DII, it's the enabler for solar and wind technology and hydrogen and so on. And in KII, it's an enabler for Kaspa.
Let me just quickly ask you. So on the 5th of May, Kaspa broke grounds, right, with the Crescendo update. Now we have 10 blocks per second. How did you feel when you saw that happen and happen smoothly?
Yeah, I think it was very important because last year when I was exposed to Kaspa, people explained it to me already with 1 block per second. It was one of the fastest in the crypto ecosystem. And they told me that it will become much faster, like 10 blocks per second. And they had a plan, and it looks very credible. But I had my doubts because, as you know, in the crypto world, there is a lot of promises. And very often, people, for whatever reason, cannot meet the promises and expectations. So I was a little bit cautious. And I also said to you, listen, I'm prepared to say a little bit to talk about this from my point of view, but I would like to see that this first expectation that they created to me, that they made it come through. And they did. On the 5th of May, it worked flawlessly. And that is very important because this is about trust and about quality and about predictability.
And it's amazing to see a proof of work solution 1000x faster than Bitcoin. So of course, Bitcoin is amazing for store of value, but it's amazing to see a proof of work that's decentralized, that inherits the same security as Bitcoin can do that speed. Moving on to Paul, your background, right? Not many people are perhaps aware of what DII was or is. DII was set out to be. So DII, I think when I did some readings, you started in 2009. You were the CEO, and then you over time became the chairman of DII. So just take us through that journey.
I started in 2009 with DII, which was in those days an initiative of the German industry mainly, under the header of Desert-EX. They founded, together with me, I was the founding director, the XXIM Industrial Initiative, DII. Today we call ourselves DII Desert Energy. And our objective was to enable a market for solar and wind and other technologies, clean energy, clean tech technologies, which are energy applications without any emissions, at lowest cost and energy security and so on. Actually, from my background, I'm working in the energy market all of my life. I studied in Delft University in the Netherlands, electrical engineering, on energy engineering, also nuclear technology, by the way.
Nuclear technology.
And a lot of thermal technology with nuclear and coal and oil and gas in the late 70s or even the mid 70s. It's a long time ago, by the way.
Right.
And over the years, by the way, I saw more and more the future for clean energy. Coming back to this DII, Desert Energy, we started in Munich, in Germany in those days, in 2009, with, as I said, basically German companies. But over the years, this has grown to a group of companies that is about now 120 international companies from all over the world, like from India, from China, Europe, North Africa, Middle East, America, Africa, and so on. And these companies have an interest in projects on clean technology like solar, wind, power, infrastructure, storage, hydrogen, e-fuels, and so on. So we help actually these companies to find their way in this market in North Africa and Middle East. And already 10 years ago, we moved from Munich to Dubai, because the market is in North Africa, Middle East, the Arab world, so to say. And we said,
MENA.
Let's move from Germany to MENA. And what happened actually 10 years ago, 2015, and it's a very important year. It's a little bit like the year of the crescendo of Kaspa, by the way. In 2015, solar technology became so cheap that it became competitive on its own. So it did not use any subsidy anymore, at least not in that MENA region. In those days, 2015, it was about 5.8 cents per kilowatt hour of production from solar PV, so photovoltaic, the solar panel, so to say. That is a little bit the background of this DII and this group. And there we are with this 120 companies, and we do a whole spread of activities along the value chain.
Right.
And what we discovered, by the way, is that if you are talking about technology, and you talk actually about systems and integration of systems like production, transmission, storage, and supply, and flexible demand, or all kinds of applications at the demand side, industrial and commercial and residential demand. But that does not talk yet about the market itself. It is just the hardware, so to say.
So this is all the supply side, right? Yeah, there's no mention of demand side so far.
Yeah, so this is not living. This is only projects, and it does.
Right.
You can, of course, build a power station or a solar plant, and a wind plant, and so on. You can build conversion electrolyzers to produce hydrogen. This is all technology. And what we then said, you need also to dedicate more time to the market. The supply and demand, about prices, about trading, about the information, like the certification of clean, what is clean, and so on and so forth. So we founded 2 years ago, with another colleague, I founded the ZETA, the Zero Emissions Traders Alliance. And that is actually the trigger.
Right, that's where the ZETA exchange comes from, right?
Exactly. That was also where we talked to Rory 2 years ago and said, Rory, listen, we are now focusing not only on technology and on systems, but also on a market. And we said what we need is a good information systems, information carriers to bring the information from the source to the sink. The source, like this clean energy, like renewable or nuclear or fossil, to know what is the source, where does it start, up to the sink, who is taking this energy, who is buying this, who is using this. In other words, where is, for instance, greenhouse gases, where are they produced, and who is paying for this, and what is the price, and so on and so forth. And that's also the moment that Rory brought us in contact with Kaspa, because really, if you look like the originally Bitcoin, proof of work is the king of the crypto ecosystem, is perhaps on that sense the best we have on Earth. That is proven, very sound, and so on and so forth. But Bitcoin is not it's not a carrier for a lot of information or applications, like smart contracts. You cannot pack it on Bitcoin. Bitcoin is too slow, too expensive, and consumes a lot of energy, which is no problem for the role of a store of value. That's okay. And it's working very well. And I mean, there is no doubt that this will continue to work in the future as well. But this is not something we can use for to manage processes, to bring information fast and quickly at lower cost. Then there are a lot of proof of stake and centralized crypto applications in the world. But they are not always the best solutions. They are not always secure enough. They can be manipulated. There are a lot of stability problems here and there. Although there are outstanding applications, but you could almost say that this Kaspa is a sort of in-between solution. It is both proof of work and decentralized, like Bitcoin, which you want to have. And it is fast enough. It's even now the fastest in the market, and scalable and able to carry a lot of applications. And that is for us very interesting. So they said, well, we have to investigate what can we do with this new technology.
Just for listeners, few terminologies I wanted to clarify, because most crypto perhaps enthusiasts, holders don't come from the background of energy. That's why I think for us it's so exciting to listen to you, to learn about this renewable energy markets. So a few things wanted to ask. The first one is, when you say DII's mission was to enable markets, what does that mean, to enable market, for someone who's very new to this, right? Who's not coming from this background?
That's really a very interesting question that you asked, because until today, people are always asking, like, what are you really doing? What is it? Market enabling. I like to use this term market enabler, although I know that it is always confusing to people. People are always asking, what is it? Actually, in that sense, we are unique with this DII, because we have started in a region in 2009. There was no market for renewable energy. There was no renewable energy, no solar, a little bit of wind. There was a little bit of hydro plants, or actually big hydro plants in the Nile in Egypt. But there was very, very little renewables. And so there was no market at all. And if you start with some companies that said together, we said, well, this will become a market. So you are sort of literally a desert, a blank region where there is nothing. And that is where also companies are getting together and thinking like, how can we approach this? How can we start? How can we convince governments and the industry, so the public and the private sector, to do something? And that was also in a time that renewables were very expensive. So they were not competitive. They needed a lot of subsidies. And so people in these countries said, why should we do this? We have oil and gas. There is in most of the countries there have a lot of oil and gas. And the countries that had no oil and gas had no money to invest in renewables. So there comes this enabling from. So there are two main streams that we were pushing. One is to improve the technology, like solar, wind, and hydrogen and everything, to get cheaper through economy of scale, through improvement, innovations, and so on and so forth, which worked fantastically because the cost level of solar, as you know, because most people these days know that in 2009, the price of 1 kilowatt hour from solar was 25 cents, 25 euro cents per kilowatt hour. 25 cents.
And
2009.
Now it's 5.8, right?
So you cannot imagine. I mean, we are now in 2025. We cannot imagine anymore how it was in 2009. This is like prehistoric.
Yeah, it's only 17 years also, right? It feels longer, but it's only 17 years, right?
Exactly, 16 years, like 70 years. So that was 25. Also, wind power was similar. It was a little bit cheaper. And through our work by creating conditions and talking to governments and to international institutions like World Bank and governments like the German government, the European Commission, later on also China, the State Grid of China, and so on, we were able to give this a push. And at the same time, the technology became cheaper. And as I said before, in 2015, we reached already, after 6 years, this competitiveness level. And the second point is in these regions, and it's still the case today, a lot of fossil energy is subsidized. So you could say is the subsidy on the wrong side of the story, right?
Also,
if you want to push for renewables in an area where the fossil energy is subsidized, you have really an uphill battle. There was was almost impossible. So we did also a lot of work in convincing governments to take these subsidies from the fossil away, and we are also working on even creating an environment in which carbon emissions will cost money. Because carbon emissions, as you know, greenhouse gases have a disastrous effect on our climate. And we see it every day. We see it each year more and more. People that do not believe it just have to go out and to look in the world to the big places of the drought and the changes in climate. So if you take the subsidies from fossil away, if you facilitate renewable energy so that it's easier to build projects, and if you also put a cost on carbon emissions, then this energy transition from the old polluting area to the clean situation will accelerate.
Yes,
and that's actually our work. So this enabling is actually accelerating the energy transition.
Right. So you were the pioneer of the renewable energy in 2009 as DII. You guys were like pioneering this thing, which didn't exist back then, was very expensive. And now it's the uphill battle that you had to go through the governments, the regulators, to make sure this happens. So Paul, obviously we discussed the price of how the solar price has dropped drastically, right, from 25 cents to less than 6 cents now kilowatt hour. What has happened?
Today, by the way, the 6 cents was 10 years ago. Today it's 1 or 2 or 3 cents. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
crazy. And this is all because a solar panel got cheaper, the batteries got cheaper, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
That's massive. So I see what you mean by crescendo happen in the power and renewable energy in 2015. I like the comparison.
Yeah, we will see something similar in Kaspa, because in Kaspa it has so many options and possibilities in the future, because we are just at the very beginning. Kaspa is a very young technology, and we are already so advanced. And if this gets, if it will scale up, and if more and more users will discover the possibilities of this Kaspa, then this will get also cheaper. By the way, there's more applications. Also means more return, more upsides, and more economic benefits. Not only in general, not only for the big companies, but also, that's important because it's decentralized. It's also benefits to the people. So everyone from small and so to say, economically weak to economically strong and large, everyone can can get its benefits from such a proof of work,
Yeah.
decentralized and parallel processed crypto.
That's amazing and well put. Just one last question before I want to move to the KII stuff. So when we say now, renewable energy, right? Like that's been the like industry term, but it's now becoming more of a carbon neutral term, right? Like that's what I'm starting to see more and more. That the offsetting obviously started like maybe 10 years ago, carbon offsetting. And now it's like with these new e-fuels that coming along, which we'll obviously talk about as well. So what is the right terminology to use now? Is it the renewables that we still say, or is it becoming carbon neutral or carbon? Like, what is the right way to put it?
Well, it's almost now like a lecture, huh?
Right.
I think I always say there are three types of energy on the source side. It is natural renewable energy. This is like solar and wind and hydrogen of hydropower, geothermal. There is no carbon involved there. And including in renewables, you can also include biomass. But in biomass, there is carbon included, but that is carbon which is recycled, so to say, recycled because the trees, they take the carbon out of the atmosphere, and then you use this carbon again. So this is the one group of what you say the renewables. They are carbon free, so to say. Then you have the nuclear. Nuclear is also in principle carbon free. Nuclear has other characteristics. It was like 50 years ago when I studied in the Delft University. It was the big hope. In those days, we said, well, this is the future. Nuclear is still part of the solution worldwide, but it is a small part because the technology is very expensive and very sensitive. You have the nuclear waste problem is still a major problem, and it cost a lot of years' time to build a nuclear plant, and you need cooling water and so on and so forth. So it's not easy. So that's the second category, and the third category is the fossil category, like oil and gas and coal, lignite, and so on. This is taken from the earth, from sources, and then brought to places where they are being burned, and then it produces CO2. And in the sense of natural gas, you have also a lot of leakages of methane, and methane is also a greenhouse gas. So this is a very problematic group of energy problematics. So these three sources, that's what all we have on Earth, more or less, for this purpose. And so we see that basically the fossils, if they are being used, then they have to take care that they take the CO2 that they emit out of the air, they avoid emitting. You can store but it's also very expensive and very. So then you have nuclear that has the problem. So the remaining part, the basic part, is renewable then. Solar, wind, hydro, geothermal, waves, and so on and so forth. So this is about the terminology. So, and as you said correctly, this is also about no carbon. And at the end of the day, the most important in energy systems and energy markets is that these energy systems and energy markets do not put more greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, because there is too much already. Yeah, we have to take it out. You may have heard about the ppm, the particles per million. How many particles there are in the atmosphere. It used to be something like 280 years ago, and now we are at 420, 430. And scientists says 350 is about right. So we have to reduce the amount. But that is it is a very difficult task. But anyway, we are pragmatic people. So in our area, what we do is to promote carbon-free energy, to promote renewable energy, and make sure that is also the most economic option.
Thank you so much. I think, Paul, that was very useful. Now, moving on to KI, right? So Rory O'Neill came to you last year and said, "Hey, look, this is amazing technology. Kaspa is obviously getting 1 block per second at that time, moving on to 10 blocks per second, decentralized, secure. It's got everything that you need." What was your reaction that time, and what led to the creation of KII? You were already busy with DII, right? You're running DII for 16, 17 years. What went through your head?
Well, I'm used to a lot of fancy ideas. I'm now working like 50 years in the industry, and I hear very often very fancy ideas, and part of them are brilliant and are a sort of Elon Musk type of ideas that really are being realized. And there is also, of course, a lot of ideas that are complete nonsense and can never be realized. And that is all in the game. It's okay. So now, with Rory, we were talking about. I asked, of course, how this would work. He explained to me this block DEC, a ghost DEC, and the parallel processing. I think that's the basic thing. I of course have in the old days. I also got a lot of mathematics at the Delft University, and I'm aware of parallel processing, for instance. As a phenomenon, I said, "Wow, this is really smart. If you can speed up processes by not building blocks in serially, but in parallel, that is really smart." And also he explained to me that it is a group of the researchers, you know them, like Shai and all the people behind this. They are really decent, good people. I talk to them. They know what they are talking about. They are really brilliant, and so this gives confidence. And then we talked about the potential applications, for instance, in energy trading. Actually, like I said, I just had created this ZETA a year before, and one of the problems in energy trading is that the traditional energy trading does not know anything about carbon content and carbon emissions, and also not really about renewable. Actually, I already started in 2000, so 25 years ago, with renewable certificates in those days, the so-called RECs, renewable RECs, and IRECs, exactly, renewable energy certificates. And this was very cumbersome because a market for trading, global market for trading of renewables never took off. For many reasons, because governments did not agree on how to do this, how to define renewables. There was a lot of fraud, by the way, If you talk about certificates, then you always have to deal with the problem of fraud, that people claim certificates, but there is nothing behind there. And that is disastrous for a market. The market is, of course, always built on trust and credibility. So we said, well, this Kaspa is very secure, very fast, is accessible. Everyone can make use of it, can buy it. It's not so very expensive, and so on and so forth. One point, for instance, in 2000 already, I was involved in setting up a REX, renewable energy certificates. That was in those days in the Netherlands and the Scandinavian countries. And we were focusing on the tradability of renewables through a certificate, a green certificate, renewable energy certificate. And in the very early days, there was a sort of market in these countries, Netherlands and the Scandinavian countries. But this was never taken over in Europe, at the European Union. But the important thing of this REX was to avoid fraud, or to keep...
Right? To standardize
it, not only the standardization, but also to ensure that this is all, the quality is at the best level, so there is no abuse.
Right.
So that from source to sink, by means of trading a certificate, who has produced renewable energy, where did this renewable energy go to?
Yes,
it is a sort of virtual trade instead of a physical trade.
So Paul, can I ask you to simplify this? So RECs I think it's such an important term for perhaps Kaspa audience to understand. It's become an industry norm today, right? A lot of players about it. Obviously, there's a lot happening in the REC space. So when REC started, so it was like, if you're an energy producer, so you produce renewable energy, you can get these certificates, which you can pass it on to counterparty. Like someone wants to buy it because they have a regulatory mandate, they can actually buy these certificates over from you as a producer, and the producer can sell it to someone in Netherlands, for example, or any other country. And you can do this through a trading platform, right? But these didn't exist back then. Even they don't exist today.
Yeah, exactly. You hit exactly the point. That was in a time that there was no regulation in different countries, and if there was a regulation, it was all different.
Different, yeah.
So you could not trade across the border. You could not even trade within a country. Right. So we managed to make it tradable in the Netherlands and in the Scandinavian areas like Sweden and Denmark. But it was still very limited, and that never took completely off. And it also had to do with the fact that there was not really an incentive at the demand side, at the consumer side, to take this, to buy a little bit more for renewable, so to say.
Right.
We managed in the early days in the Netherlands, for instance, we managed to make this incentive for customers attractive by reducing their eco tax. In other words, when they could show a green certificate, then they would not have to pay eco tax, to simplify it. But this was only on one country or in two countries, and not in Europe. Right. So this more or less stayed at a very low level. Later on, IREX was also expanded international. REX was expanded to IREX internationally, but also IREX is possible, but is still at a modest size because there is not really internationally, globally, a big incentive to buy certificates. So that is something we are pushing for, more incentives to buy green certificates, for instance, through a quota system or a floor on offtake. Yeah, how it works is that each generator that produces a kilowatt hour from renewable energy gets a certificate, or 1 megawatt hour gets a certificate for that megawatt hour, and that certificate can be sold to someone that wants to buy green energy.
See.
Yeah.
Right.
And there is a traded market partly, but as I said, this is at a very modest level because of the lack of international harmonized regulation
So this is today, right? So you're not saying
today.
like today, right? I see. So
Yeah,
there is a lack of marketplace essentially. There is no marketplace
exactly.
where you can trade. Right. That's amazing. That's a very big
Yeah,
opportunity right there, right?
yeah, yeah,
And,
yeah.
and
And,
so
and this is, by the way, this is only about the renewable. And on top of that, we talk also about carbon content, about carbon emissions. There is a link between the two. Because everything that produces renewables does not produce carbon emissions, but also nuclear does not produce carbon emissions. You see,
right,
only fossil energy generators produce carbon emissions. And there are in fact thus two markets. One is a market for green certificates, and the other is a market for carbon credits, carbon penalties, depending on the regulation in or the jurisdiction.
right,
So this is all at the beginning still, and it is not harmonized. It is an archaic situation worldwide, and this is something where we see a major breakthrough also through the United Nations, the COP, the yearly COP conferences where they defined a better framework like Article 6 for carbon reduction and trading of carbon credits. And this may be one of the first applications of Kaspa to bring this Kaspa into this trading world.
So you're sort of defining three things here, right? So you're saying renewable energy recs, energy credits. You're talking about the carbon offset credits. I think that's what the one you're defining, and the green bonds, right? The ones like green bonds that
Well,
are.
of course, there are, green bonds is more on the financing side. The
Right.
bonds on how to finance to get a cheaper financing if you deal with sustainability. Very often connected to sustainability, to green, to renewables. Yeah, that's right. There are not only these three options in the market. There are many more on sustainability. This is a very big topic, but I think here you have the main options. Yeah.
I see. I want people to really understand how big these markets are, right? These are not just tiny credit markets. These are like in trillions of dollars, right? So I'd love to, perhaps go into how big are these markets individually, if you happen to know.
Actually, I don't know exactly how big these markets are because they are at the very beginning. But like you said, if you extrapolate, if we would get a global market for trading green certificates and carbon credits, then this would be many trillions of dollars for sure.
Yeah.
Like if you see now the total fossil energy market, oil and gas and coal is something like $7 or $8 trillion turnover per year. And related to that are all these carbon dioxides and greenhouse gases, and they have to be reduced. I mean, it's more the question like how fast do we want to have this reduction? Because the faster we reduce the emissions, the better it is for our future.
Yeah.
Because we are already over the brink, right. And if the world community wants to reduce the emissions faster and faster, then this the costs or the credits or penalties in that market will go up exponentially. This will many trillions of dollars.
Yeah. No, thank you, Paul. I think it's amazing to touch upon this big picture, and obviously to connect the two dots, right, where you're coming from and what is the reasoning behind it. So that's amazing. There are a few other initiatives that that KII has started, right? And one of the ones that we got excited along with ZET-Exchange is the Gigawatt coin, the stable coin. Love to know more about what was the thinking behind it, and I'm sure it's connected to the ZET-Exchange, right?
Yeah, this is all related to each other. I mean, one after the other, Rory came with a whole long list of brilliant ideas,
Right.
and you pick now two, or the first we have discussed. The second one is the Gigawatt coin.
Yeah.
Actually, in trading, and that counts for many industries. If you only take industries, if they do deals with each other, or the bilateral and multilateral deals, buying, selling to each other, then if they clear these deals, then it normally goes through banks. So they have to pay, they have to convert a local currency into an international currency, and then it goes through banks, and then it gets cleared. And so it costs a lot of money, it takes a lot of time, it's a lot of hassle. And already many years ago, in this energy field where I was active in energy trading, we were thinking, like, can we make a shortcut, a direct link from the buyer and the seller, irrespective of what currency he is and what jurisdiction and so on and so forth. And if you have a sort of a stable coin, or a coin, or better, a stable coin, that would help in all respects. I mean, it's fast, cheaper, more transparent. There are no. It's also more safe, and so on. So this is like ideal.
Yeah.
And this was always very difficult, and it's still too difficult. You have, of course, to SWIFT between banks, but between industries, they are never managed to do something similar. There are some approaches now in the crypto ecosystem, yes, but they all have their limitations. And Kaspa, with its proof of work and decentralized and censorship resistant and scalable, is of course ideal to offer a sort of clearing mechanism based on a stable coin. We have the usual stable coins today that the I don't know how they get the USDT and USDE and so on. This is a market of $7 trillion already, by the way. So this is a huge market, but there is not yet something related to the industry. If you trade like chicken in the chicken industry, then everyone understands what's the price of a chicken. So that could be a sort of the reference for a stable coin for the chicken industry. And so we say in the energy industry, you could, of course, take the price of energy, or the general price, or the price of clean energy as a basis. Maybe you can add some elements of a dollar and a euro and the BRICS to it. So then you stabilize this, and then it can be made as a reference for this industry, the energy industry.
As you say, the stablecoin market is a very big market already, right? And we think it's going to be huge over time, right? So what you were defining is a subset for the energy market, right? That this is aiming to be the stablecoin for energy market, renewable energy market.
Yeah, in principle, you're right. We start with clean energy, so to say. And we say all the whole industry that's dealing with clean energy, they know what it is, they know what the price is, they know how stable this is, because the prices of clean energy are very, very stable. And also, funny enough, the Kaspa itself is mined based on energy, and the purpose is to make Kaspa cleaner and cleaner.
Yeah.
In the end of the day, we expect Kaspa to be mined during the times that there is sunshine, so you have almost free energy from the sun, the solar or wind during wind hours, and so on. So this is a very, very obvious basis, the clean energy. And this, in the beginning, this will be used by the clean energy traders and businesses and energy chain. But this could be taken over or used in a broader way by whatever processes. Also the wider industry. And in the end of the day, there may be a very large application of this Gigawatt coin.
So how is the backing of the stablecoin will work?
Yeah, that's exactly the design question that we are discussing now, because we have to do this carefully. But once we set this reference, it will be, of course, determine the whole functionality and stability of this coin. But it is basically, like you say, all the important basic elements of clean energy, which is the megawatt hour or the gigawatt hour, and it is about the green the green certificate, or the value of green.
Okay.
The fact that something is renewable has an extra value in the market. It is about no carbon content. So it is not forbidden for like nuclear or fossil, but if you have nuclear and fossil, then you have
Right.
to show the added value in a clean market. And you can also add some elements of currencies like dollar and euro and yuan and anyone else, if that would give it a more international global stability. This is something. This is design issue where, of course, you need some thought to give some thought, and once we are there, then we will introduce this.
I see. Awesome. I think we'll love to obviously know more once you have the design ready, how it's exactly going to work, because I think that'll be the exciting time to ask more questions, to obviously poke holes at it, because it has to be right. It's we're saying stablecoin that's going to trade this huge market we're discussing here. So Paul, a couple more things, right? There's Warpcore, that's KasUnion, and there's KMIF, right? What can you tell us about those three that I entirely skipped here so far?
The number one here is definitely Warpcore.
Warpcore.
This is Warpcore is the connection to the financial markets, financial processes. There we were working on an ISO certified, ISO 222 certified. Actually, it's the modernization or the stepping up of what we know now with SWIFT between banks, for instance.
It's a messaging system, right?
It is but it is more than that. The whole new fast. This is very new because this is all it's about real time shifting and moving financial values around the world. And as I said, the most important is the quality of it, because it should be very credible and secure. And that's the ISO standard, ISO certification.
Are you saying about the Kaspa being the currency that the banking system will use? Is it the part of Warpcore?
Well, Kaspa is the carrier. Yeah,
as the carrier. Okay, I think I'm trying to.
Kaspa is always the carrier,
right? Of course, yeah. Layer one will be the carrier, but not as the currency that will be used within the banking system. That's not what we're discussing here.
It can be, of course, any currency. What the bank wants, they can also be the gigawatt coin. Yeah?
I see. Yeah, I was going to ask the gigawatt coin itself. I see.
That's why I use the term of financial values.
Financial value.
You can bring financial value from one country to the other, from a sender and a receiver.
I see.
Worldwide.
Right.
It's real time.
I see. Awesome. So next one comes KasUnion for you, or what? Do they have order of priority for KII?
KasUnion is also high on the list. This is, the KasUnion system worldwide now. This is the instrument for people, the man in the street worldwide, to pay in money and to bring it to another country, and to a receiver and then. Or a sender and a receiver wherever on Earth.
Remittance, right? That's the similar equivalent thing, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
So what will be the coin there for remittance? Like typically for remittance, you have a currency, right? So is it the Gigawatt coin that you're thinking, or is it some other stables that might be designed over time that be used as a remittance, or is it going to be Kaspa?
Well, again, Kaspa is the carrier here. Number one is first of all, if the sender has Kaspas and wants to send this to another, then it's a very easy thing. It can be done relatively easy. But if the sender has a currency, local currency, then of course this currency is converted, brought via Kaspa to the receiver.
I see.
Yeah, on the back of Kaspa. Kaspa is like the bullet train,
Right.
yeah, with a real time being almost at the same place worldwide.
Yeah, Kaspa is definitely. I like the analogy. It's a bullet train. It can send anything
Yeah.
anywhere very quickly and very cheap.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what we basically do here with these examples is that we look at all the traditional processes between industries, including the financial industry, and we look like where is there an added value in increasing the speed or lowering the cost, or also lowering the energy that's used. Because a lot of processes now consume a lot of energy, and with Kaspa, this energy can be reduced. Yeah, you have this K-heavy hash algorithm in Kaspa, which is an energy efficiency improvement. So all these improvements that Kaspa is bringing will be examined in relation to the applications that we see, the traditional applications. And if we see an improvement, like in sense of cost or speed or quality, then we can propose this to these industries.
Right.
So we are the market enabler. We are not the ones that are building this and producing this and selling this, but we are the ones to making the industry aware of it.
Yeah. I think it's good to differentiate that, right, and keep highlighting that point that KI will be enabler to these things. But not actually going to be building that. Like, you will be needing builders, and you'll be working with industry participants to build all this sort of application.
Yeah, exactly.
And the one we haven't touched upon is KMIF.
Yeah. We have also real estate tokenization. We have Olive Chain. We have the KII Academy. That's right. So we have a lot of examples on our list that we are working on. I personally do not know at the moment a lot about the mobility insurance framework. We also have the airspace 3D, urban aerial mobility, and logistics.
I think I could.
So
there's so many initiatives.
Don't worry. At this phase, we will. There is a long list of very interesting potential applications. Some of them are our own creativity and inventions, but also a lot of people come to us with potential applications. They come from industries, and they say we have this or that problem, or we have the idea that with this higher speed of Kaspa, we can lower our costs, and then we are investigating this. And if this looks interesting enough, then we can, for instance, put a working group on it and try to work this out and then show it to the industry.
Who's actually funding, or who's actually behind KII, right? Is it you're self-funding with Rory, or how's it being funded, or is it backed by VC, or will be backed by VCs in the future? How's backing it? Yeah.
This is a very valid question, and that's also one of the reasons why I'm very happy to be able to explain this, because some people think that we are very rich people, or we are sponsored with early coins or something. That's all not true. We do this on a non-paid basis, Pro-Bono, because of course, we see the interest to ourselves as well. Yeah, we are creating a market like we do with DII. We also started very modest, and once the market develops, then we will harvest. We have no doubt about that. Especially Rory and Bara Kreplova, the managing director, they are working day and night, so to say. And I'm not so sure if they are getting a lot of payments. I don't think so even. But they are, like myself, idealists.
Right.
For the time being. Yeah.
But amazing. Yeah, it's amazing.
Of course. Yeah. This makes great fun, and I'm quite sure that this whole Kaspa ecosystem and world will grow and will get high value. Yeah, so
Yeah.
there will be no, I don't say no fear that this is all void energy and time that we put into this. In the line, by the way, I almost forgot to say, of course, we have a team of volunteers and they do great work, and many of them beside their normal work. So this is the fantastic way to start a new initiative. And if we do this right, then we will all, of course, benefit.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. That's beautiful, and thank you again for explaining. Now, well, I think there were just a few things, but I would like to perhaps wrap this up. I wanted to ask, like, if there were anything you would like to talk to the community about.
Yeah, I think I see, by the way, with a lot of pleasure, a lot of interest from the community on X and on LinkedIn and so on, and also with our people in the web through the website. So I can only encourage people, everyone that has good ideas or want to develop something or add something to this. The applications, also the smart applications based on Kaspa, to convey this, to also organize this. Yeah, so this is really bottom up what we are doing.
And Kaspa is bottom up, right? Anyone who has ideas, who wants to build, reach out to KII. There is an email, I believe, there. You can reach out to the team through LinkedIn.
Not only to KII, also to organize in your own environment. If you have like this interesting idea of the olive chain, this is something that farmers could do in Italy, for instance, or in Algeria, and they can sit together and increase or improve their process from source to sink with quality and no fraud and so on.
So if you have any good ideas, just go ahead and start something on Kaspa. Start building today.
Exactly. Start something, or they can always contact us. They can also do it without contacting us, but it is around the globe. We should all take the fruits that are there, the low-hanging and the higher-hanging fruits.
And I think, we spend a lot of time within Kaspa community. We talk to a lot of builders with the smart contracts, as you just highlighted before, coming on layer 2s. There's two teams, prominent teams like that we have spoken to before, Casplex we have spoken, like they're both building. And they're like so much, they were like, we have 12 teams initially, and then another 20 teams waiting that want to build on these layer 2s. Because smart contracts really enable a lot of applications. So I think, as you put it, right? Yes, if you have any idea, go ahead and build. Like, there's so much talent there within community. Any closing thoughts from you? Anything else that you haven't covered off today?
I say, first of all, many thanks for this opportunity to show who we are. And I'm always there if there are questions from your side of your organization. I can always follow up on what we are saying. Like after a certain time, we have more tangible to offer, because we are now, as you see, at the very beginning. And also I can point at the KII Academy, where we want to set up training and education and all kinds of innovations to make people aware of the possibility.